Hello everyone, how are you all? Hello everyone, how are you all? It's Claude here, and I am on this call of this live Instagram in regards to, now we've got through the technical issues, in regards to awareness and an inclusive world for the hidden disabilities, neurodiverse within work placement, and also acknowledgement of new homelessness as well. Please do all feel free to visit the hashtag Clause SCN Law, link in bio for more information. There's also merch which is available as well. It says the Clause SCN Law. Do feel free to check that out as well. Zoe should be joining us, and yeah, I'll let her introduce herself. Just wait for a few people to come in as well. There are two other petitions as well, the change.org and the 38 degrees. There's also the government one, and it requires for 10,000 signatures before the 10th of June. However, we'll be keeping on the momentum, and also it's important that we take action, and those two petitions were created that we are able to make Clause SCN Law become law. I think she's joining us now. Okay.
Hiya.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm ticking over. I've been busy, but I'm good.
I know I seen you was on a live just before this. You are really busy.
Yeah. Well, it's important, and it's good to have you. Good to have you.
I know finally everything is working today. So
really
fingers crossed.
Yeah. So as we were saying, did you hear about the recent report of the recovery education? He's resigned because of the education situation.
Yes, it came out today, right? I briefly heard of it when I was working today.
Yeah, it just shows that even how they've gotten about SEN within their requirements of providing a better kind of, you could say, standard for education is quite unbelievable. And then of course the funding isn't even near to what could be productive. So yeah, if you would like to introduce yourself, it'd be great.
Yeah, of course. Hi you guys, so my name's Zoe. I'm a 23-year-old dyslexic sports therapist. I guess on a mission just to spread the awareness about what dyslexia actually is, and just to give my 2 cents on the matter and just share my experience.
That's wonderful. And yeah, as we were discussing yesterday about youth homelessness as well, what is the situation like in Birmingham?
Girl, the situation here is not what you would expect. Like every time you think of London or you think of Birmingham, obviously the two biggest cities in the UK, you would not expect to see the amount of homeless people you do. Like I was saying to the other day, 2016 time, there was homeless people, but not that much. It's progressively got worse and worse, but you would think if a problem got worse, the government would do something to help resolve it, or at least start to do something. But out here in Birmingham, honestly, the rates of homelessness has skyrocketed to the point where you'll see homeless people just everywhere, but even to the point where, I don't know if it's a thing in London, but out here in Birmingham, say if you're in your car and you're waiting for the lights, people have like resorted to standing by the lights and going round to the cars asking if they've got any spare change. But they do it in the most dangerous places, and I'm like, you've got to be careful because you could get run over. But it's heartbreaking because some people, not to say that they would want that, but it's that or nothing, really. The government have not given them any way out of it. They've just left them to their own resources, which is nothing. Like, you would think we would have something in place for homelessness, but it's on the rise. And to tell you what else is on the rise here in Birmingham, do you have like shared accommodation for those who are maybe just come out of prison, struggling with drug addiction, or fall into that category? They normally have houses, like house shares and stuff. Out here, that's really on the rise, but that's causing a lot of issues because the government are letting these landlords just rent out these apartments, but there's nothing to help them there. They're just taking everything there to it. And that's something that's been really big on the news over the past couple of days, actually, about the whole house share situation.
Yeah, and also that's the thing, is that there's always a story behind why the people are homeless. And of course, have you found that people try to investigate or ask them why they're homeless? Not really.
Not really. You'll get some people that, like, I've seen people that will talk to them just to find out, because I think it's human nature to be curious. Like, I do walk past and I wonder, how did you get in that situation? Which honestly, it's very easy when you think about it. It only takes a couple of misfortunes for it to just end up that way. If you lose your job, if you're not getting enough support, because we even mentioned a lot of people who end up being homeless or go to jail have some sort of neurodiversity that was never really addressed. So it's sometimes I can see it. It's very easy to fall into that trap, and it's sad. It really shouldn't be the way, but honestly, we've seen it time and time again. And as we will discuss, our education system is just setting a lot of people up to fail.
Yeah, very much so. And of course, with the resources, because there are resources there, we're supposed to have like type of different, you could say, materials that's supposed to make us learn in a different way and also be able to understand assessment. But those resources which are being provided are not having the backing or funding, but they are able to manifest those things. Because of course, those materials, they need funding and they need those importance of kind of continuation. If there's an interruption, for example, for like a TA, of her not getting paid, or of course resources not really being funded, how is it going to be productive for a student to be learned and do well, of course. So I think these are some of the big matters. And you was going to say?
Just talking about the different resources, like even if they just had audio books available, that's one thing. Like, as a dyslexic person, I hate reading out loud. I'll read in my own time because I've got my own speed and make my own mistakes. But when, like, growing up, especially in lessons, especially in English in secondary school, everyone had to read at least a paragraph. And I'd be there trying to figure out what paragraph I have to read so I can go over and over and over it to make sure I didn't make no mistakes. But why can't we have audiobooks? It's not cheating. A lot of people see it as cheating, but they tell you when you progress and become an adult, to be successful or to be seen as someone who's knowledgeable, they tell you to listen to audiobooks. Why is it not the same in the schools? Why did they not provide? Like, that's just one example of something that could work for everyone. It would work for a neurodiverse person, someone who's not neurodiverse. Like, why are we not integrating different things like that? Because that's going to take less funding than some of the other things. But they don't seem to want to do anything. Like, that is such a small, minute step when you think about it.
Well, what I found very interesting, I got told that if you go to uni now, it's the case that you may require resources like a laptop or audio, or like an audio thing. But of course, apparently you have to put down, at the moment, you have to put down a £200 per head price. I was thinking, for starters, the student won't probably have that money because they've already gone through the application. And also, they've still got that debt to deal with at the end of the course. So you wonder if really, why are they charging it? It shouldn't be the case that, of course,
I was one of those people, actually. So when I went to university, so obviously I graduated in 2019, but when I did start university and went through the whole DSA, whatever the process is, the woman I had was telling me, at the moment, you'd have to pay £200 if you wanted to get the laptop. And I was like, where do you think the £200 is going to come from? So I ended up, because I already had a tablet which was fairly new, and
Mm.
when she did some tests on it, she says, okay, you could just use that because it is going to last you through university. So what ended up happening is I used that laptop and got, well, the tablet, and I got them to just put all the software on there. Because like you said, I'm a student, I'm living off student finance. I don't have just a spare £200, but why am I spending £200 on something that I need? Luckily, I got the printer for free. How that worked, I don't know, but I will say it's a godsend. I use that printer all the time. But like you said, it's baffling the fact that we actually have to pay £200 in order to get what we need. Like, why is that not, like, they talk about funding, that we should have funding for it. Where is the funding? You're actually getting your kind of most vulnerable students, when you think about it, to pay just to be on the same level as everyone else, which I don't think is fair. I really don't.
And to lead on about the word funding and of what you just said, I think it's so important that we as the publicans should know exactly where funding is being sent to, which areas it's being sent to, because for education, this is why we're in the situation we are in at the moment. Because of course you hear that reports where SEN's being cut, and there's continued shortfalls within SEN, special educational needs. And you're thinking, well, how come throughout the pandemic then there's been money within that area, but education has been forgotten about? And this is why the awareness is so important, that to make them know that we are there, and to make them know that our voice is going to be heard, and that we want that action and we want to be included within the budgets.
Exactly. I do think
the budget didn't include us.
I don't think it did, and you would think it would, because we always throw statistics around, and we had that great conversation yesterday how we are more than just the statistics. But if we look at the statistics, I think it's something like 10%, probably even more of the world population are dyslexic. So how are you not taking any of that into account, especially when it comes to funding? Because out here there's one place that used to help dyslexic people out. This was before I was kind of like old enough to go. Completely had the funding cut, nothing put back in place for it. And like you said, our voices need to be heard. We need funding in order to move forward. Like you said, I will say, when it came to the pandemic, money just came out of the air. Granted, it was needed because we was in a very dire situation, but our education system's very dire when you look at it as well. Like we talked about, the reports about, they still have not been given the right amount of money. They got an expert to do the inside investigation to say we need this amount, and the government just said, oh yeah, we'll give you this amount, which was so far off. And it's like, and we already discussed that's probably not going to include neurodiverse people, because at the moment they want to get education back to normal. But when they think of education, they think of your, I don't like to use the word, but the lack of a better word, your normal people. They are the ones that take priority, because I guess they're easier to work with, as opposed to you and I, where we may need certain things to make things go by.
And that's the thing, is that really we're not a difficult case, or we're not a difficult statistic as what they have in mind. And also I think this is why I see that the reforms before haven't really been beneficial, because basically on the 31st of May, as I'm aware of, I think it was 2 years since they marched to Downing Street to say how special educational needs need to be taken as a priority. However, since on then, I haven't found any acknowledgement or action that's really been more kind of, you could say, beneficial or made any difference. We still have court systems. We still have court systems that, don't have the evidence there, because when it comes to a person's progress to their education or finding a placement, evidence has been taken out, and you wonder, why does that happen? You also wonder, why does students and families have to be dealt with an immigration judge when it's an education matter? And also, it's awful. And the amount of times I asked for my mum to say to them, I want an educational judge, and they said they were going to give me one, and of course when it came to the day, it was still an immigration judge. And you think, why these situations are happening, but of course it's not getting the job done, is it? And this is where you have to wonder, even with the education and healthcare plan, it needs to be about education. I feel that education has been lost within health and other sectors for a convenience of not funding for education. And that's what I could give a short summary of what some of the experiences are in that point of view, and why education in special educational needs hasn't been acknowledged.
Literally, like, I remember when we very first spoke and you actually informed me about an education healthcare plan, because I'd heard the word being thrown around, and growing up I actually was not given one, but now I know I should have been given one. But you actually was the one that told me exactly what it was, and I was like, even then, that's something I completely missed out on, because I wouldn't have known, and no one thought to say, oh, this girl over here is dyslexic, let me like inform of what it is, and completely baffled me. But you are right, because I think the only thing I seen, which was, I think it might have been March or April time this year, all house parliamentary something for dyslexia, where experts were giving their like 2 cents into it. But what happened after that, I have no idea. I remember I must have logged on to it and I seen it. I was like, oh, this is interesting. But I don't know if anything came out of it. People were just talking. But what I will say on that, there was a lack of diversity within that conversation. You had multiple colour of skin people present for it, but when you looked at the actual people who were the researchers or giving their 2 cents on it, there was just a lack of colour. And that's something I think as a whole, when it comes to this conversation, we do need to include all different races, all different sizes, all different type of people, because one thing I think we lack in education and just on a whole for dyslexia is different type of people as role models. We always hear about the Jamie Olivers, the Richard Branson. They are great, but I am not a middle-aged white man, so I cannot relate. Like, we need more U's and I's. We need more people of colour. We need some people who are in the LGBTQ community. We need everything. And
representation.
The government are just picking and choosing who they want to listen to. And it's always quite funny that the people that they listen to look like them. They don't target the right people.
Yes, and that is where I'm going to say that also there is black inventors, there are black classical, but what it is they don't get the spotlight. There was a interesting program on Channel 4 that said about BBC 4, I think it was BBC 4, yeah, that was it, BBC 4, and it informed people about the black classical artists. One of them is Florence, I think her name was, is it Florence Price or Price Florence something, but it's along those lines. Yeah, but she had a backlog of classical music, and they purposely put it into like the kind of back of the actual shop for people not to be aware of it. How awful in the 21st century, of course, for not the next generation to be aware of the classical musicians that were the same colour as them and were successful. So yeah, I fully agree. I fully agree.
This is like the rappers, the grime artists, like they put us in, when it comes to music, we'll just put in a very specific category. We do rock that category, don't get me wrong, but we are more than just a rapper, a grime artist, a house, like we're more than that. Because it was also going off what you just said. When I was listening to Sky News a while ago, they were talking about, you know, when you have like your orchestras, the lack of equality between men and women. And then when you do get a few women on there, there's a massive, massive lack of coloured people. And for the longest time, like whenever you think of an orchestra, you literally just think of white people, don't you? We don't know of many coloured people of skin who are, but there's so many out there, but they just get cut at the first hurdle. Yeah. Whenever they go to like these auditions or whatnot, they never make it any further, no matter how good they are. So it was very interesting that you mentioned that, because I did watch a program that was very similar, talking about the classical music and black people.
Great. And yeah, I think that's the wonderful thing, is that for me, when I saw that, I was empowered to know that there are black people in classical, and I thought that was wonderful, and that was great to know. And that's why even like the Mason family, they do a wonderful job as a family that have all of them play a musical instrument. How wonderful. And I think it's so important that we need to live in a world that's inclusive. We need to live in a world that is no discrimination, and we need to live in a world that, of course, we didn't ask for a race report. We asked for action, and especially the Black Lives Matter, they asked for action, and however, what did they do? They didn't listen to us, and they brought out a race report that says institutional racism doesn't exist. Well, institutional racism does exist, and discrimination does exist in this country, sadly, and it's a factor of a lack of education. This is why education is so important. And for people to travel, and for certain people not to be in their bubble, we might live in a more inclusive world. And this is why education needs to be funded, and especially special educational needs.
Honestly,
So,
like
yeah.
everything he said is just spot on, because when they said that statement, I was like, do you want to ask me about my experiences? Because I've never had a bad experience per se, but it's always experiences where you look at them and you know they're just not educated. So sometimes I can't get mad at people like that, because they're just ignorant due to lack of education. Like here in the UK, it's very under the rug with how they are racist. It's very jokey. Like, oh, I'm just playing. We shouldn't be. I think it's programmed to people to like just laugh it off, and realistically, no, we need to talk about that, because they've got away with it so long. To them, it's ingrained in their own culture now to be that way, which is just appalling. Like out here in Birmingham recently, there was sadly a stabbing of a 14-year-old, and that's actually been linked in King's Standing. It's been linked to being a racial attack. Now the police made the worst statement ever, saying that how do I explain it? They said that they're looking into other leads. They're not focusing on the fact that this could have very well have been racially attacked, because there were slurs being taken up. There's a lot of rumors on the internet, so I won't go too deep into it, but I think just them saying they're looking at every single possibility, like they said it in a very manipulative way that made them say, oh, we're ruling out racial stuff, as if racial things do not happen, when realistically we all know, especially us who live in the UK, it's still a big issue. And like he says, that's where we need to educate our young people, because I think where was it was Cardiff, they're actually having lessons now where they're talking about the Black history. They're also talking about the history of white colonists, because that gets left out in history lessons. We learn about the wars and stuff, but we do not learn about how the white people back a day came and conquered everything and moved everyone from their own place. And that's why everyone, like, there's different colors of people all around the world due to what happened in slavery times. We do not talk about that enough. So I was really happy to hear that they were doing that in Cardiff, and feel like that should be in every country, or like all the major cities and minor cities. Like, why
it's now England's time. It's now England's time to now add it to their curriculum. We'll see if they do it, but I hope they do, because what I found very interesting is through the movement of George Floyd, and also through the Black Lives Movement, what has Boris Johnson really has said? I haven't really heard him like say any kind of acknowledgement of consideration for us, and he can talk about other topics, but of course I haven't really heard him address about the George Floyd movement or Black Lives Matter. And then for Priti Patel to call us, like, I can't even remember the word, but oh God, I thought that's not the best way to deal with a serious matter. That's very it's a very sore topic, because the main fact is what took place, and it shouldn't have took place. And the fact of that they want to deny that discrimination doesn't go on. Well, I can say that from my example, at the age of 8, when I was at school, I was suicidal because I got told that if I was black, I cannot play. And also I was isolated and excluded in a mainstream school, and this is where my mum fought for me to get into an independent school, but it was a 6-year fight. Well, why was it a 6-year fight for me to be educated in a placement that would deliver and accommodate and also make me be able to achieve my potential? And then also, why am I out of education and sofa surfing then as a young black male if there's no discrimination in the UK?
Exactly. They don't ask, they don't reach out to hear these stories, do they? They just don't. They don't do anything, do they? Because what you've just said is so vital. The fact that you went to a mainstream school. So I went to a mainstream school and I stayed at mainstream school because honestly, I didn't know there was any of school. I knew there was mainstream and there was private slash grammar schools. I didn't know there were actually independent schools that can help people like you and I out. I didn't know any of that. But the fact that you had to go through a 6-year battle, like that's basic. We're at school for about 5-6 years, aren't we? So they basically took your whole school experience battling. Like it should be done like this because it's people's education. They always tell us you need to have good education because then you're going to get a good job and you're going to get paid good, which we know isn't always the case. But if you're throwing education down our throats so much, you need to have all your doors sorted. You need to have something for the SEND people. You need something for the your average person. You need something for those whose behavior is a little bit all over the place because we all should be on the same level. So like we all need to be on the same playing field.
It needs to be equal. Yes,
and
it needs to be equal.
The UK is really not equal from the different guidances they give, even through COVID. Oh, Scotland's doing this, Ireland's doing this. Aren't we the United Kingdom? Like, why do we have so many different things? Even when it comes to their education, like I know Scotland does some good stuff with their dyslexic students. They're like, I've read a lot of resources from dyslexic Scotland dyslexia, and I'm like, what is the UK doing? Like, we're so late to everything. And then there was one thing I wanted to say actually when you was talking. When you was at school, what was your like creative arts kind of thing like did you have music lessons? Did you have like arts and drama and stuff?
I love that you brought up that point because those areas are not funded, and this is why you see that creative industry has been suffering through the pandemic, and they haven't really seemed to care about the creative industry. And most percentage of neurodiverse have a creative mind. So yes, I love photography, I love art, and I do like to songwrite, and I do that as a hobby. And I'm really saddened to see that the crowds are not at festivals, the crowds are not able to enjoy music, they're not able to enjoy venues and dance venues. And you're thinking, what priority have you given to them as well? And I think it's important that we have those subjects, and I think it's important that we also have those subjects that are funded, because they need to be more acknowledged other than having Brit School. Brit School is one of the only places that students feel they have to force to go to, because that's the only place where they're doing theatre and creative subjects. Well, why don't we have theatre and creative subjects in other placements as well?
Yeah, we have.
I think
that
it's so
here.
important for you because
kind of like, oh, carry on, sorry.
No, I just think it's so important, and it's not being, it's kind of, you could say it's being forgotten about, and it needs to be in the light as well. You was going to say.
We have something similar to that. So you know how you was talking about the Brit School? Out here in the UK, in Birmingham, we have a school called BOA, which is kind of similar, where it's dedicated to performing arts, theatre, all of that good stuff. Very hard to get into, but we do have stuff like that. But it's just crazy because growing up in school, I did have like drama, art and music. Like I actually was able to play steel pans in secondary school, which was great, even though it was just full of black people. No one else dared to do steel pans, which they could have joined in, but they always kind of just went elsewhere. And it was really nice because I think that was one of the places where I think all of me and my friends felt accepted, because it was a black person teaching us how to play steel pans. And we went to so many different venues. But I was surprised because after a couple of years after I left the school, they no longer did steel pans anymore. The funding for it completely went, because we never used to pay for it, because it was a bit like your extracurriculum. Like, I love music, just like you. I love music. Terrible at art. I'm creative, but not necessarily drawing or painting. It's more, I like listening to music. I'm really good at sports. Yeah, I'm more of a movement, as you can see. I'm more of a movement type of person. But I was really shocked to hear that they completely got rid of the steel pans, because they did more than that. They did like drums, guitar, but steel pans was something different, and it linked with people's cultures, and they completely scrapped the funding for it. And I was like, that was such a good thing, because it wasn't just playing the music. We got to travel to different parts of Birmingham to perform, which was so good. Like when you're young, it's like an experience. And the fact that schools now, like some schools don't even have enough to fund drama projects. Like,
No,
I never really
don't.
took part in any of the drama projects, but per se,
Oh,
but I do
okay.
remember every year there was an end of year production, whether it was
Oh,
Grease,
goodness,
House of
yeah.
Horrors, and they've completely scrapped all of that. And I'm like, it's no wonder kids complain about school being boring. You're not giving them any, the creative side's completely taken out of it. We don't live in a world where it's all just logic and maths and
Then,
English and
yeah,
science.
yeah.
When you get into the bigger world, you do need to be creative and sometimes think on your toes. Like a lot of us, I've been in a situation where I've got to think of something quick to get out of situations, or the whole fake it till you make it. They're not teaching them any of that in school. The creativity's kind of just disappeared. Like my little cousin's doing, well, he's doing computer science, which is great, but
Yeah.
he's have to do like triple science. And I'm like, isn't just science enough? Like, why is he doing triple? Like everything's like maths and English. I know they're key subjects, but why can't we make everything else, like why can't we bring
A
everything else
different way
into the
of
picture?
learning, would you say? That's another thing, a different approach.
A different way.
That's so important because, of course, if you kind of make it too in-depth, that's where our brain gets really clouded, and you could say it gets a bit too much. And I know what that feeling feels like. And of course, this is why we have things like extra time. This is why we have things like where we need a bit of a break from it all and we come back. And it's important that, of course, like I could say, it was lovely to learn how to play the recorder. That was one of the things that I learned, one of the first instruments. I don't know if it was the same for you, but that was one of the first instruments that I learned at primary. And yeah, it's really an important industry to take care of and to have in mind as another subject. And this is why the Claude SEN law does want to look at a range of subjects. And also, this is why it's important for the government to consider and hear our voices in the fact of what our stories and what we want implemented. And this is why the Claude SEN law was created.
Exactly, for that reason. They're not reaching out to those who it affects. Like he says, the previous reform laws, you can tell they're not taking in the like people's experiences because they lack something, and that what they're lacking is lived experience. They don't know what it's like for a color of skin person or someone who is white but from a lower class background. Because I feel like when it comes to support for dyslexia, if you are, well, not just white, but if you are from like a middle class background,
Mobility.
you are fine. You will get the help needed because you most of the time have the money for it. But if you're anyone else in a lower working class and down, you are honestly going to struggle. So like we've both said, my mum had to fight for ages as well to be like, Zoe needs this. She needs the help. She needs the support.
Yeah.
And as you'll know, dyslexia can be genetic, and she's also dyslexic. So imagine both of us dyslexic people not knowing what dyslexia is, but knowing that something's not right, trying to get help. They just look at you like, well, you don't really know what's wrong, do you? And I'm like, no, but I know something is. Like, they're very quick to make you feel like, is it just me? Am I just not normal? Like, the way they go about it is just horrible. But the UK system's outdated with how we teach. Why are we not getting kids out the classroom a bit more? Not everything has to be book and paper and pen to paper. Like, we can get out and do stuff, especially like when it comes to maths. I hate maths with a passion. I don't feel like maths helped me with taxes or mortgages or anything that you'd need in real life situations. Why don't we take them out the classroom and take them somewhere where they can see that? Like, just teach us how to write a check or something. Like, I know they do it a little bit more in PSHE lessons now, but what is our education system teaching us other than maths, English and science? Yes,
very true. And this is why I think even outdoors trips, they're not even being considered as well. So this is where we need to acknowledge that outdoors trips need to be considered. And also, like the top up in the recent report of education and making summer schools and making it more basically focused on education, when it's not going to be beneficial for students, it's not going to be beneficial for teachers in that point of view, because it's going to put more stress on them. It's going to make them really dislike their job. It's going to make the students dislike their studying and education, and the approach is so wrong. And this is where basically they're disconnected, unfortunately. And the issues is we have a systematic way of thinking in the UK which needs to change, and also the neglect is really bad. There's discrimination for social mobility in the fact of different class systems where you may be from. If you're from middle class, you get looked upon by an upper class person, and they don't really mix. And this is where the integration is very fragmented, and it's important that we take these actions. And if all of you, please do feel free to check out the hate tag clause SEN law, link in bio, and yeah, add your signature for change and action. Because more than ever, it's really a serious time, and it's an educational emergency crisis right now for special educational needs.
Did you hear that they're potentially thinking of making the school day longer as well? It was on the news yesterday. When I heard that, I was like, that is a recipe for disaster. I understand a lot of people have missed out on education, so you want them to try and get it back. Realistically, they're not going to get it back like that. You can't extend the hours because, like you said, it's more strain on the teachers who, which we can talk about in a sec, are not even trained to deal with SEN most of the time. You have to do that very specifically. But there's that issue. The kids, who wants to stay in school for longer, honestly? We know there's been research into how much like our brain can take whilst at school. I don't think extending the hours are gonna help. Like, realistically, no one wants to be in school for that long, and we know it's not healthy. And the fact, like he says, that they want to take summer camps and make them more educational, then what's the point? Summer camps are there to let loose and learn skills that you don't always learn in the classroom, or just learn it a different way, like team building, communication, playing a game of football, or playing other like team building skills, what you would do on summer camps. That's where you develop them and you use them. When you're in the class, you can say, oh yeah, teamwork and skills, blah, 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 and you don't use them because you're always in your own desk. So the fact that they want to, like it says, they're making everything so systematic and boring. Like, we shouldn't have a boring way of learning. But going back to what I said, teachers, which surprised me, are not all of them, but some of them are not trained to work with SEN. When they do their teacher's degree, if they're not put in a placement where they come across a person with a learning difference, if they're not put into that, then they have no idea. And I used to really hold resentment to teachers, like, why did you not pick up on this? Why did you not help me? Until I learned that they probably didn't know what they're doing themselves, because they are not trained to deal with that. How will we not address that? Why will the government not address that they don't have the necessary teachers to teach our people? Especially like mentors. There was always like a behavior mentor in school. Why is there not a learning difference mentor? I'm pretty sure the rates of behavior like children with behavior differences as well as learning differences are pretty much the same. Or you could argue learning differences could be higher. So why do we not have our own mentor in each school to help facilitate that, to take the pressure off the teachers, but also who is trained and qualified to work with neurodiverse people?
Very true. And this is where it's so important, because of course we have a big number of exclusions, and you'll find that most of those students who've been excluded either had neurodiverse, or they were either had a different kind of, they had Asperger's or autism. And you're thinking, why are they being excluded? Why are you not dealing with it properly? Did you hear about that scandal about that was it Waterfall home, where they were treated? Oh, okay. Well, there was a care home place that you could say were trained to work with special educational needs, where they weren't, and they were treating the special educational needs awfully. They were abusing them, and there was parents who had to basically say, what are you really doing to take action to the council? And the council weren't really doing their job. And this is another issue. The councils are not watched over. The local authorities are not watched over. And this is where the abuse comes in. This is also where the neglect of SEN. And of course, we should have a person who's trained to deal with all this kind of behavioural, but also finding the issue of, why are they finding it difficult? Is this a better approach for you to learn? Is this a way how we can kind of make you understand the lesson? And of course, teachers, I believe, should be qualified, and this is what's included in the hate tag clause SEN law, is to have a degree for them, but they're able to learn how to deal with and how to teach with neurodiverse. And it's important that we have that at uni as an option as well for them, for those people who are learning to become teachers. And it's important that also we improve our infrastructure of placements as well, because some placements are horrible conditions, some are not up to standards for a safe educational kind of, you could say, study environment. And yeah, these things are not really being taken priority or being looked at. So this is where the clause SCN law wants to look at those areas and wants to improve those areas, and I'm sure we can. So this is why, you know, we need to be heard, and myself and Zoe are here to bring that awareness, and many other people who are within the group as well. So
definitely, like, I would love to see teachers take a different approach. Like, perfect example, when a teacher used to mark my work, she wouldn't like read to see what I'm trying to say. Like sometimes, so let me explain this in a different way. I would make a lot of spelling mistakes, and obviously as a teacher you are there to correct them, but they would just correct that and nothing else. Like, there was no positives, like, oh, so you spelled this wrong, you spelled this wrong, you spelled this wrong. I was like, okay, other than the spelling mistakes, how is the piece on the whole? If you look past the spelling mistakes, is it good? Like, teachers, their brains are just not trained to do that with the education that they got for teaching. It's, oh, this is a mistake, this is a mistake, this is a mistake. Like, they do give positive praise every now and then, but even when it comes to marking, if you know someone who is neurodiverse, I'm not saying treat us any different, but try and look past some of the spelling mistakes sometimes, still correct them. But if I'm giving you a piece of work, try and see the piece of work for itself, not that, oh, you spelled this wrong and this wrong, because it's really demoralizing. And it's like, if I'm not getting a little bit of praise, then what's the point me doing it? Because I'm someone who switches off very, very quick, especially if I'm A, not getting help, or B, if I feel like I'm not good at something. I'm one of those people where if I know I'm not good at something, I don't want to push myself, even though I'll probably get better by pushing. I don't want to push it because then I'll feel worse, and I don't think anyone likes to feel worse. But the reform's definitely needed, and like you said, if anyone can sign the petition, because it takes less than a couple of minutes, it's super quick, and it's stuff that we need to do. We really do need to change the narrative. We need to talk about the different things that are happening at the moment and let our voices be heard, because I said before, us too, everyone else, we will be the future. We will be in a position when we're older and the politicians are all changed. And that's another thing. We need more coloured of people who are younger as politicians and making decisions, because it's very hard. Like Priti Patel, for instance, yes, she is a woman who is of colour, but she's not helping anyone. She really is, like, she's so high up in her position and she's not helping anyone. She's not using her words correctly. She's not standing for what I would assume she used to stand for. So we need to get more people who are younger and show a little bit more colour, maybe LGBTQ, all different people in the House of Commons, because the world is not just one form of person. And I think if we can get younger people in the House of Commons, I would like to think younger people would also then be heard, because these young people would want to obviously help other young people. Because what I really dislike with the UK, and I guess it's most countries, it's older people calling the shots for us. It's the older men and women saying, young people want this and this. I'm sorry, but you're not young no more. Have you spoken to a young person to find out what they need? And that's something they don't do. They really do not do it. And it's a shame, because
and I have to say what's really important is that it's all very well because she is colour, but she isn't black, or this is the thing, they haven't really gone to the point of course, where you have a black person in government. Or there was a program that was very interesting, and they said, would we ever have a black prime minister? And you have to wonder, it was on BBC Two, I think, a while back, and they looked at, like, if it would be possible. But of course, if the cabinet doesn't even have like a representation of our colour, how are they able to understand to take action? And also, if you don't have a person, in
the Labour Party, Diane something, and another woman with dreads. They're the only two colour of skin I see whenever I watch any House of Commons stuff.
No, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and that is the thing, is we're still very much at the starting line. And I think it's important that also there's no representation of neurodiverse. There is not any representation of hidden disabilities or disabilities, physical as well. And, you know, I understand that Matthew Halfcock is neurodiverse, but there's not more. And that is the thing, is you have to think of how come we haven't got more representation like that. And also, if we are going to have a person who's going to deal with a certain like topic, they need to understand that topic, instead of a person who is, for example, able and going to be dealing with a disability topic. How are they going to be able to understand what are the flaws and what are the areas of action? So yes, I believe that, you know, these are the issues that need to be looked at. And of course, what you said is wonderfully, because it really adds on to why we have these issues.
Definitely. We have a lot of issues, and through hard work and just speaking, we will get to the end of them, and our voices will be heard. I just guess it can be very frustrating when nothing really happens and you sit back and you're like, well, why is nothing happening? Like, we've been through the education system now. We know its flaws. I don't really want my little cousin, well, he's not really the best example to use, but I don't want someone who is dyslexic or neurodiverse going through the exact same system and not having any help. Like, I do understand things have got a tiny bit better, which is always in the right way, but it's still not where it could be or should be. Like, when we look at other places around the world, don't get me wrong, they still have their issues, because I've got friends from America and Egypt and we've spoken about it. But in other parts of the world, like Sweden, they've got their act together. They've got so much more things in place for neurodiverse people. And I'm like, UK, everyone looks at you as being like a gold standard for education. You are not a gold standard for education, because your system is set up for a lot of people to fail and a very small amount to really succeed. Like, even when they used to do like the STEM projects and all of that stuff, my name was never on the list. I was never on the, there was a specific program where you was like, it wasn't special education, but you was very clever, basically. We were on the clever list because they were very clever. But even then, it's putting these categories in your face and saying, well, you're not going to get there. You're not doing this. Like, why, if I wanted to do STEM, because I was neurodiverse, I couldn't do it. And I was like, okay. Like, if you're going to have something for them, have something for us as well. Like, you've got to cater for everyone, which I know is difficult. But then again, it shouldn't be difficult. How hard is it to allow us to use laptops or allow us to use audio books? Like, I don't see why you can't do that.
And I think what's very interesting is the names of what they create these kind of systems, and you could say strategies or plans, are not really worded in the best way. So, like, for example, I don't know, have you always found that people would say we are articulate, we present ourselves very well, however, we have our own challenges and we have our own kind of, you know, difficulties. There may not be face value, but they are there. And of course, I get told many times that I'm articulate, but of course it doesn't mean that I'm good at other things, or, you know, I do sometimes forget. I have short-term memory. I have issues where I have with my legs because I had rickets because of lack of vitamin D when I was younger. And there is so many things that are a contribution of myself that created me. However, I don't let them deter me, and I'm still always determined to do well and of course achieve for the best. And these are the things that I found even within the personal independence payment, which used to be called I think it was used to be DLA, disability living allowance.
That disability allowance,
Yeah, they write reports which don't say what you say, and they would say that I am able to walk, I am able to be in crowds, when these are the issues that I have. I have these issues where I get very hot, I get anxiety, I have these other mental health issues, and all because of part of like my autism and other things. So it's not easy, but of course, this is where they thought they could strip me away. And of course, my EHCP plan, Education Healthcare Plan, was edited in Part F. And this is where they don't fund for me, and they don't fund for my carer, who is my mum. And you think, wow, it's just a mind boggle in the fact that, you know, these are the things that are going on behind closed doors, but not in the light.
I hear you there, especially. It's the same for me. Like, I've got a lot of people say, oh, so you're very articulate. Oh, you're very this, you're very that. I love to hear it because it just goes to show we can be. But at the same time, it's like, well, I am, but I do have my own differences. I also have terrible short-term memory, but I've got a really good long-term memory. But my short-term it goes in one ear and out the other. I daydream a lot. I never know my lefts and rights. Like I have all the telltale signs of being dyslexic, and people sometimes forget that because us two were openly talking about it, and we can have a really educational conversation like we're having now. But they forget that we have our own differences. Like being dyslexic, and I can imagine with autism, it is not easy whatsoever. Like I have the days. So good example, I've got to do a lot of phone calls tomorrow for my job. And I was looking at the people's names and I was like, I can't say those names. I was like, oh my gosh, like you get yourself in a panic. And once I'm in a panic, it does not, like I have to take a good 5, and as you figured out yesterday, I need to take time away to relax and then move on. For your average person, they may see that and be like, oh no, that's fine, I'm good, and continue. I get very stressed very quick, and I need to take that time away, and I need to, what I do, put my music on and completely zone out. That's the only way I can calm myself down to then move on. There are things that not everyone does, and they're the things that people forget because, like you said, our differences are not physical. It's not a physical impairment that we have. It's all in our brain. Like, our brains are just different. They're just, they work their own way. But there was one thing I actually wanted to say. When it comes, like you says, the wording of things, how they say it's a disability. It's quite a harsh word. I know it's been in conversation within our community, like, why can't we just say difference? Why does it have to be a disability? I do get it doesn't help us with doing certain things. Like before, I wasn't honestly really fussed with the word difficulty or disability, because I always see it as more than that. But when I listen to the conversations, I'm a bit like, I understand where you're coming from, because saying it's a disability, it really like makes you feel like something's really wrong with you, and realistically there's not. It's not that anything's wrong, you just do things your own way. Because I do know, I just wanted to bring it up, there's that conversation with, should it be a learning difference instead of disability or difficulty? But then on the other hand, like I did understand when people say, well, it is a difficulty, like you do find things difficult, and I was like, that case I totally understand, but I do understand that words have feelings towards them, and being called disabled can be quite emotional, especially when you think about disabilities, you think of physical disabilities and impairments. I don't think of dyslexia, and then I'm always on the fence where I don't feel right to call myself disabled, because I'm not. I don't want to take away from those who are physically disabled, but we do have a difference that is not physical, which means we get left out, and it means we don't get the necessary support.
Yeah, and that's where on one of my talks I had the thing where it says basically the physical disability doesn't just look like this. We have visible disability, and there's also this top as well called the clause SEN law.
That's top. I like that. I'm a big fan of blue.
Which can be found at the following link at the pinned comment as well. But yeah, it's so important, and I think of course I got told that they thought it was brilliant that I've done this, but they don't want to be labelled, and I understand where they're coming from that point of view, because some of the names are a bit kind of, it's a bit kind of, it makes you feel a way, or it makes you feel kind of indifferent, when really we're not indifferent, we just have a different way of working and a different way of thinking. So yeah, it's been a pleasure to talk to you.
I get why you've used the words, because sadly sometimes in order to be heard from the people higher up, we need to use their language, which I don't agree with, but for them to understand what we're on about, we need to use the word disability, otherwise they're not going to understand anything. So I understand why you've had to use certain words like that, because in order for them to understand, you got to talk their language. And then as soon as we get off in the door, then we break down the stereos, like, we don't want to use this word, no, we want to use difference, or we want to use this. But no, I've really enjoyed it. We always have a great conversation. Every time we've done this, it worked today, I'm happy. But every time we've done it, we've always had a great conversation.
And I can similarly relate to you. I think music has really been a great calming factor, and meditation as well, because sometimes I found the same issues where it's like you can kind of get a bit, you know, you feel like you're kind of getting a bit at the top of your head kind of thing, and sometimes it can get a bit too much, and like sometimes if things don't kind of work right, it can get kind of, I have a bit of a kind of issue where I have to have meditation, and it helps me in that factor as well. And long-term memory is wonderful. I have the long-term memory, but it's a short, but of course, and the names are hard to remember as well. So
I'm the same.
Yeah, but thank you for everyone who's joined, and please feel free to visit the H-tag Clause SEN Law in the link in bio. And if any of you have stories, or you only just realised you've been diagnosed, also on the point that diagnosed is really important, because not a big number of people get diagnosed, and we need to make sure that people are aware of what issues they may have, that they are able to get that help. So if you want to get in touch, feel free to get in touch with myself or Zoe, and we can give you any advice, and feel free to share your stories as well. And thank you for having us, and thank you for coming, Zoe. And yeah, thank you for joining. Bye-bye. Speak soon.
See you later. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.